Hello, welcome to another edition of Dialogue on CCTV International. I'm your host, Tian Wei. Since the Lhasa riot in mid-March, there has been intense press coverage in the Western media about what was going on inside Tibet and inside Lhasa. However, some prominent Chinese media, together with some Chinese public, has been accusing some of the Western media coverage as being biased. What exactly is going on in this debate, and what are the reasons behind it? I'm joined in the studio by Charles Lee. He's the head of Department of Technology with Peking University. He's also the author of the book Cowboys and Dragons. Meanwhile, we also have Professor Anbin. He is an associate professor of media studies with Tsinghua University. But before we go to a discussion with both of them on their perception about this debate, let's take a look at this background report.
This was Lhasa torn apart by mobs on March the 14th. Police and security forces showed restraint and saved lives. But in a report published on BBC's news website, editors ignored the Red Cross and large Chinese characters for first aid, portraying the scene of armed police doctors saving lives as a heavy military presence in the region. CNN cropped this photograph, cutting out a mob throwing stones at armed police trucks, making the scene appear to be military trucks driving towards civilians. A German newspaper portrayed the scene of police officers saving Han people in riots as law enforcement arresting Tibetan people. German's RTL even used a photo of Nepalese police arresting protesters with the title, "New Protests in Tibet." The broadcaster admitted its mistake earlier last week. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has criticized some Western media's false reporting on Tibet. Ministry spokesman Qin Gang was asked at a press conference if a website called anti-CNN.com had received funding or material support from the government. The news site is devoted to exposing falsities in the reporting on Tibet by some Western media, including CNN. Qin Gang denied the government aided the website and said these reactions are heartfelt and spontaneous critics by Chinese people from all sectors of society of the irresponsible and biased reports by some Western media.
It's like a mirror. It reveals the true nature of some people in the world. It's also like an active teaching material for educating the Chinese people. Where are the real facts behind some so-called fair and objective reports by some Western media?
Gentlemen, welcome to Dialogue. Both of you might know that after the riots in Lhasa, the Chinese government, after a few days, has invited some of the foreign diplomats working in Beijing to go to Lhasa and Tibet. They went to the Zhaokang Temple and also meeting with Changpa Pankok, who is the head of the Tibetan regional government. But when they're coming back, are you reading any media reports about what they saw, what they heard, any of those details that impress you?
The reports are sporadic, and I didn't see a complete or lengthy report about their visit. Nevertheless, they did report that they saw some of the afterwards situations over there. But I did not see any specific comment about what they saw.
My impression is that they adopted a more human interest perspective to telling stories, for example, the victim's story, and also some of the Lama's perspective of the riot. But I still didn't see a lengthy report or a detailed report. They only kind of as a sort of complementary to their original report of Lhasa rioters. In that they want to provide more perspectives rather than that Chinese netizens criticize them as a biased perspective. So they want to have some more perspectives of the same story. Like the five girls story, I don't think any Western media actually covered that story in their original reporting. But after this organized interview trip, some of the media do cover that story.
There's also trips being arranged by the Chinese government, bringing Chinese, rather foreign correspondents to Lhasa to let them go there and see and hear and watch and come up with reports. Are you reading any reports from those correspondents coming back from Lhasa? Is there once again anything that impressed you or significant in those reports?
They consider this story a kind of a pre-arranged or sort of pre-directed trip. So they will not use this interview as the staple of their story, but only, like I said, complementary to their story.
There were some reports on magazines such as Time magazine or Newsweek magazine, not a full-scale report, but some minor report about what they believe happened.
Well, there has been different rounds of from the Chinese major publications, shall I say, especially newspapers and some TV media as well. For example, People's Daily, China News Daily, Southern Metropolis Daily, Global Times, and the International Herald Leader. All of these are major newspapers here in China. They have been accusing some of the Western media of a biased report in terms of covering the Lhasa riot this time. My question to you really is, as an observer, do you agree with their perception?
Well, I believe what happened from the Chinese media is a reaction to what's being reported by the foreign correspondents and foreign news coverage. And it's a natural reaction because it is a very nationalistic viewpoint, and I think it's justified. And I'm not sure if they are as objective as they could be, but I believe it's a natural reaction.
Is it a natural reaction, and what is really behind this natural reaction?
I would rather interpret it as a sort of intentional campaign, media campaign over this hegemony, actually, of the media system now in around the world, dominated by the U.S. and other Western countries. So the Chinese media actually group them together to utter a voice to sort of challenge this kind of discourse hegemony held by the U.S. and the Western media.
Can you explain a little bit more as to what exactly is the kind of hegemony that's being demonstrated in the so-called biased report from the Western media about the Lhasa riot, and why, once again, there is a very strong reaction to these, because the Chinese media have also accused the foreign media of biased reporting in previous cases, and yet this time we see a very strong sentiment. Can you analyze it for us a little bit more?
I think this hegemony is illustrated by a kind of double standard, and the Western media usually treat China as well as also Tibet as the other, which is sort of like a different perspective from the Western standard. So when they judge what happened in Lhasa, they do not use the same standard as they used for the Paris riot or London riot or Los Angeles riot. They would call these people as demonstrators rather than the word mob, as they used in their own case. So I think in this case that what U.S. media, Western media provide is only one perspective of this event, which is the only channel that the Western audience can actually accept. So in this sense, the Chinese media are very important to provide another perspective to view the same event. That is what we call actually a diversity of global mass communication system.
But of course, the two versions seem to be very different from one another. I'm not sure whether the two totally different versions are necessarily the two perspectives that you're talking about of the same story.
I think we need to base on the fact. This time, Chinese media, with the support of Chinese netizens, actually exposed the biased reporting and even fake reporting of Western media, which totally violates the ethics of journalism, too.
Do you agree